Hello and welcome to this edition of The Hard Questions. I'm Solomon Serwanjja. On this episode, I host award-winning novelist Kakwenza Rukirabashaija. He's also a playwright, filmmaker, and activist, not to mention that he is also a lawyer. Mr. Kakwenza comes to us live from Germany. Mr. Kakwenza, thank you very much for accepting to speak to us on The Hard Questions.
I appreciate you, Mr. Serwanjja, for everything you're doing.
Let's start off with...
And I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. How is life treating you? Let's start there, in Germany. How is life treating you?
I wouldn't really say that life is good when I fled the country to seek medication. Of course, you know that I am still sick, and you cannot ask a sick person how life is. It's been actually, I'm going to make a year very soon. I think next week I'm going to make a year in exile. I fled the country in Feb. It is already Feb now. So life generally has been about healing, checking in hospitals, one hospital, another hospital, finding time for myself to document whatever happened to me, what I went through when I was in prison, when I was in SFC dungeons, and recently I got a scholarship to study my Master of Laws. So that is what I can tell you about my life in exile right now. But generally, I am healing, and I believe that maybe by next year, maybe I'll be fine. I'll be very, very fine for continuing with the struggle. Maybe after my studies, I'll return home and continue with where I stopped.
You have pending cases over your head. The moment you return, you know that you'll have to go back and face the different trials that you had before you left.
The only case I know, or the arrest warrant, is for the bail I skipped. Yeah, and for that matter, you should know that the cases disturbing the peace of the president and his son, pursuant to Section 25 of the Computer Misuse Act, it was struck down. So right now I am waiting for the court to discharge me of my cases so that I'm a free person. I can return anytime I want. So which other cases you're talking about, I do not know them.
You skipped bail.
Yes.
That's an offense in itself.
It was necessary. You know, you cannot, Mr. Serwanjja, I was in a very terrible conditions, and I could not allow myself to die when I can do something. I have a defense of necessity. It was necessary that I go and seek extensive medication. 3 medics. I had 3 opinions from 3 hospitals. They referred me to go to Europe, to go to USA and seek for medication, of which the passport was confiscated by court. I applied for it. They refused to give it to me, so I could not just be there and I died. I had to run away for my dear life. If I had not got any medication I wanted, I would have died in Uganda.
And everyone keeps asking how you left the country without a passport.
Yeah, every detail I've written it in a book, so Ugandans have to wait for my book to come out and they will read the story, how I left without a passport.
And that book is titled The Savage Avenger, which you're right now working on and will soon be in the bookstore. Talk to us about it.
The Savage Avenger, I narrated details of what happened before I was arrested, what happened during the arrest, what happened while I was in the incarceration, the people who tortured me, people who arrested me, very many revelations, how I was smuggled into court before the official time, how I was subjected to judicial harassment, how I was remanded to prison unfairly, in total disregard of the law, the life in prison, how I, when I got bail and I was kidnapped from prison and taken to meet the people who had tormented me before, that is Muhozi and his other people, how I was dropped home in Iganga instead of being dropped in the hospital, how my passport was confiscated again and refused to travel abroad for medication, how I fled to exile and life in exile.
We're all looking forward to that book. Perhaps having the opportunity of hosting you before the book comes through, I thought I could use the opportunity to just take us into a sneak peek of what really happened to you.
I have been able to narrate everything on 300 pages. So yeah, the book is about 300 pages. So, as Dr. Spire said, when you torture a writer, you make him bleed ink. So I bled ink and exposed their impunity on papers.
Yeah. Could you perhaps walk us through the first chapter? Again, I'm just privileged that I can be able to host you before the book is officially launched. There's been so many questions about your life. Before the arrest, during the arrest, the time that you spent in custody, your back was shredded, and then later on, you were in exile in Germany. Could you perhaps walk us to the journey a little bit? You may not so much go into the details of it, but just give us a sneak peek. And that's after you released your book, The Banana Republic. I've been trying to read about that arrest and everything, but now that I have you on set, perhaps the first time the first time of its kind for you to tell your story to the world, after you released The Banana Republic publication, what happened to you?
Even before I released that book, when I announced on Twitter that I was releasing Banana Republic, the narration of the first arrest and torture I went through, the following day at 6 a.m., I was pulled out of my bed. I was still sleeping with my wife in bed, and they pulled me out. Several officers, about 20 of them, in uniform, not in uniform, with guns. They took me back to CMI and they tortured me very badly, and asking me why they tortured me to begin with for writing. And again, I return home and I write another book. So they were beating me again for writing about my torture. So that is how it was, and they ended up charging me with inciting violence. So I wonder how a book would incite violence. So they told me not to publish it. So I got annoyed and I told my publisher to publish the book, because they hacked into my emails and they got the book. Because when I arrived at CMI, I found they already had a copy with them, a soft copy. So I don't know where they got it from. That is why I'm saying that they hacked into my emails, my computer.
But one of the things that really struck us was when the pictures of you, and you came out strongly to expose what had happened to you. This is the last time it happened before you left. Your back was shredded, and in your confessions, you cite various names for having been behind your torture. First off, did they really speak to you why they were torturing you? But also, who was responsible for your torture?
First of all, the main person who was behind my torture is Muhozi. This time around was Muhozi himself. because we have a statement. His AD, his personal AD, Major Dennis Kakande, he made a statement saying that Muhoozi, before even getting arrested, he consulted Muhoozi about it, and he gave him a go-ahead. So they came to my home. I refused to open for them. They broke the window and the burglar proofs, and they got into my house. They beat me up and they pulled me out. They handcuffed me. They blindfolded me and took me to SFC. So now you already have an idea that it was Muhoozi and Major Dennis Kakande and other people. For example, there is this man of Chibuli CID called Dick Bill Ndiamhachi, was also among them. When I was in SFC, I met Muhoozi twice, and when I was released from prison and I got kidnapped again, I was taken to him. That was my third time to meet him. So you have an idea about people who tortured me.
Yeah.
I wrote about everything in my book, all their names and their roles.
Yeah. There was a lot of emotional breakdown, even for you. And you have had to deal with some counseling sessions to try to recover from that.
Yes, right now I'm still seeing a psychologist. Actually, since 2020, when I came out of prison for the first time, even the second time they arrested me, I was seeing a psychologist. I was suffering from severe PTSD. So when I was tortured this time around, it was really very bad, and so bad. And when I arrived here, I had to sign up for other two. So I've not yet healed. I cannot say that I've healed. The repercussions are really very severe.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Have you considered legal means to challenge the people who did this to you?
I instructed my lawyer to file in the East African Court of Justice, and he did so about 9 months ago. And I do not think that because when I was tortured for the first time, I sought legal redress and I have never got one. The second time I again filed, I have never got cases. Well, justice begins with, doesn't mean that I should go to court first. The people who tormented me, they are still alive. They are alive. Dick Ndiamhachi Bill is there. He has not been arrested. Major Dennis Kakande is there. I've not seen him arrested. He confessed. His statement is with us. He submitted it to the prosecutor. It is before court. General Muhoozi is there. I've not seen them arrested. Like they arrested this woman who tortured a young girl of 14 years. So that is the beginning of justice. I've not seen anyone arrested them. They arrested me when I was very well, very healthy, and released me when I was almost like I was half dead. I was, I almost died. I was just telling my story with a smile. Let us start by people who tortured me. They are there. They are still even working. They have not been arrested. So that is where we should start from.
Yeah, and you've taken this to the East African Court of Justice, and from what you're telling us, this was 9 months ago, and that they have been served.
Yes, and before that, actually, let me tell you something. Shortly before I left, shortly before I fled the country, I received a call from Odrek Wabogo. He requested to meet me. He saw my pictures in the media and he was also shocked. So he requested to meet me, and I met him with my lawyer, and I told him about everything, about the people who tortured me. And I think he met me on behalf of the president. So he went, he said that he's going to meet the president and they talk about it and he will give me feedback. I wondered, the person whose peace I had disturbed or I had allegedly disturbed would send another person to really check whether I was tortured, because he even took me to a bathroom somewhere and I undressed and he saw my scars on the back, on the thighs, the broken ankles, my fingernails had been removed. He was also shocked and was asking me, and he was like, as if he doesn't know what is taking place in the country. He was like, are you sure you have been done this? Some human being did this to you? I have never seen it. That is what he was saying. I told him, please, stop feigning ignorance about these things that are happening and you say that you don't know about them. So if they were really serious about me getting justice, they would have started from there, but they slept over it.
And what does that speak to?
I would seek justice anywhere. I will go to the ICC. I have already gone to the East African Court of Justice, and I believe that I will get justice. Because these scars I have, my shredded body, you know, there is no way you can say that. First of all, a human being, you are a human being, you are a father, you are a brother. What would you really think? Would you run to the people who inflicted all that damage again, or you would seek justice from anywhere?
What would you wish for the people who tortured you?
What do you mean, what I wish for them?
I mean, yeah.
I believe in the law. For me, I believe in the law, and I believe in justice. The people who tortured me must get arrested, must account for their sins, must account for their criminality. The people who tortured me must get arrested and arraigned before court so that I can get justice, so that I can get compensation. It saddens me that they are still moving around and torturing more people and presenting themselves out there as if they are innocent, as if they respect authority, as if, okay, they have aspirations of being president. Which kind of president is Mos going to become when he does not respect authority, when he does not respect human rights? In this 21st century, we should look at leaders who respect authority, who respect the law.
Yeah, and one of the reasons is because of your writing. A certain quarter of people in power say that it's because of your writing, the way you write, the way you publish your work. Let's talk about your writing style. Some people have described it as disrespectful and totally unacceptable. And they think that you've crossed the line in your writing.
What is disrespectful in my books? For example, my novel, the first novel, The Greedy Barbarian, it is a work of fiction. I had no, I published that book. I did not name Mr. Museveni in it. It is just a piece of fiction, literature, descriptive writing. I did not name any person in his family. But I was arrested and tortured for it. I had no problem of even tweeting unflatteringly about them. I cannot say that it is abusing. It is just unflattering tweeting. When I'm blowing off the steam, I am blowing off the steam of not getting justice. So my voice should be respected. For example, you have a baby at home. When your baby is crying, just know that before the baby talks, when they are crying, that is their freedom of expression. Doesn't mean that they are disrespecting you, disturbing your peace. They want attention, you know. So before you give your baby what they want, they will still cry and they will cry.
Let's talk.
Sat down and became creative. I analyzed the problems Uganda was facing, the problems in our society, and told them in a fictitious way. You know, it is through fiction us writers speak the truth. As a writer, my responsibility is to tell the story the way it is, to reflect the truth through a story. So if I write my story, if I write my fiction, and you start coming into my space, you arrest me and torture me, that is very bad. It is unacceptable. So after that, that is the reason I went ahead and wrote another book about how I was tortured, how I was mistreated. And in that book, I wrote it respectfully. My human rights were violated, so I wrote the story about how my human rights were violated. Then again, they came back for me. So what you see me doing, unflattering tweets, I am blowing off the steam, and no one can stop me from blowing off the steam. If you don't want me to blow off the steam, you stop cooking me, because if you cook me with oppression and all that nonsense, I have to blow off. So when you're cooking tea and it is steaming, if you don't want it to steam, you switch off the gas. But if you continue cooking and you don't want, you cover it in order not to make it to steam, it will burst.
But doesn't freedom of expression have its limits? And as a writer, as a storyteller, I know that we have ethics and values that we follow upon which we cannot cross, because then we have to be guided by, ethical standards of writers. Mr. Kakwenza, you have been seen tweeting some things, including just a day earlier on Thomas Taiwa's tweet when he had mentioned that he had received several complaints from colleagues in Parliament seeking answers on issues of shortage of essential medicines in health facilities. And on your tweet, you just said, if you were treating your gonorrhea and erectile dysfunction in Mitoma Hospital, where you come from, you would have already been aware that government hospitals have no medicines. But this is a shame that you have to be told first. That's quite disrespectful to speak of a person of a deputy speaker, Mr. Kakwenza. And I think...
Mr. Serwanjja, that is my language. And there is nothing illegal in it. It is my freedom of expression, and it is a creative way of reminding him that the institution he leads, the parliament or the government he represents, it is very useless. That is a creative way of telling him, if it hurts, if the truth hurts, let it hurt. Because for me, I believe freedom of expression, okay, I know that it has limits. I do not believe in glorifying violence. You have never seen me glorifying violence. You have never seen me promoting child pornography. You've never seen me talking about, okay, those are the limitations I've told you. But these things of Simanyi, Salanda, Simanyi, what, if you think that what I'm saying is not true, take me to court. There are laws that guide that.
Mr. Kakwenza, you in your tweet, you said that the deputy speaker has gonorrhea and erectile dysfunction. And to you, that doesn't look like you've crossed the line because of just your freedom of speech and the way you want to express yourself?
I have told you that is a creative way to remind the speaker that he has failed his...
But is that creative really by speaking? Does that look like creativity when you're actually making such gross allegations on the person of the deputy speaker?
There is no law that stops me from saying that.
Really?
Yeah, he cannot go to court and say Kakwenza insulted me using what law?
I mean, you're a lawyer.
No, he cannot go to court and prove that, what I said, it is criminal. It is not. It is my freedom of expression.
Isn't that overly...
If I express myself creatively, it doesn't mean that I am being rude. There is also an advantage of being rude because you're hard.
Mr. Kakwenza, that is beyond just your freedom of expression. That is actually...
What are the exceptions of freedom of expression? Promoting violence, glorifying violence, that is unacceptable. Promoting child pornography, that is unacceptable in freedom of speech. But me talking unflatteringly, it is freedom of speech.
So you can use... So you can use any kind of language.
You can speak everything you want and no one will touch you because the law protects you.
Mr. Kakwenza, so you can use...
In excesses of freedom of expression, the law comes in. If you are arguing with me that, no, this is unacceptable, the law comes in. Take me to court and the court will decide what is unacceptable and what is acceptable.
All right, and that's what some people find offensive, that you can leverage the freedom of expression to write in whichever format and way you think you should, to try to put the point home, at the same time, literally demeaning and using abusive language, which some people think is crossing the ethical line of writers and of people who are storytellers.
Mr. Serwanjja, freedom of expression includes freedom to offend. You should know that. Without freedom to offend, there is no freedom of expression.
All right, let's look again on your writing style. We have seen you post, women's breasts, really. And you've been criticized by feminists, right, for misogyny. And people have come out strongly, including Anna Whitehead, who actually came out strongly and said that what you are doing was not fair.
Serwanjja, I did not come here, I did not accept to come to your show to discuss about women, to discuss about Anna Whitehead.
It goes to your writing, Mr. Kakwenza, on a public platform like Twitter, where you actually post this content that we consume, and therefore you should be held accountable for what you put out.
I have not come here to discuss about women, Mr. Serwanjja, or to discuss about breasts. I have come here to discuss about my life in exile. You asked me if I regret saying things I said on my Twitter, unflattering tweets about human rights situation in Uganda, about
But isn't it a holistic look at it, Mr. Kakwenza, that whilst you're expressing the way you feel in an unflattering way, you need to be cautious of how you actually put out your feelings and communicate?
I will not answer that, Mr. Serwanjja.
Okay. Let's talk about freedom of expression, which clearly I stand for as a person. I believe that we should have freedom to express ourselves in a way. How do you rank, in your view as a writer, or what's the future of storytelling in Uganda vis-a-vis what you went through?
There are very many things to write about in Uganda. There's a lot of injustice to write about. There is a lot of gaps, especially in the area of legal thrillers to write about. But I don't know why many writers are not taking it up. I don't have no idea about it, but I believe maybe they will wake up and start writing about them.
Perhaps when they see what happened to you, many of them will actually call their, will slide into the spiral of silence.
For example, I sat down and I wrote Banana Republic, things that I went through when I was arrested for my novel. And you have just said that you read it. When you read it, did you find anything that really invoked the state excessive power about me or on me? I clearly sat down and I wrote my story. I spoke out through writing, and everything I went through, I wrote about it. So what wrong did I do to invite the state to terrorize me, to almost kill me? I did not do anything wrong. I only spoke out. So don't confuse my life on social media, my Twitter, with my books. They are totally different. My books, I write about injustices. On social media, I blow off my steam.
And I quote, while receiving the PEN Award, you said, "I feel oiled. Freedom of expression should never be hampered by the dictatorship, since the same recognized in domestic and foreign laws, and this government cannot claim rule of law without submitting to international law that we are signatory to. The pen will always win against the gun and all the oppression. Rogue regimes go, but the pen is mightier." That's a quote that is quoted by the East African when you were receiving the PEN Award. I just wanted to get your deep thought on what you said about the pen will always win against the gun and all oppressions. And you said rogue regimes go, but the pen is mightier.
Let us talk about the human rights. You know, human rights have ingredients. I will answer your question later about the mightiness of the pen. Human rights, they have ingredients. First of all, the state must recognize that human rights are inviolable. They must recognize that they must be universal. They must be subservient to international charters. So if that is not fulfilled, and I get my pen and I write, and you come for me, and you say that you're going to silence me because I have written about excessiveness of the government, you will not win against me. You will not. We have, history was written before. Writers have never lost a war. You saw writers who wrote against the King Leopard, his atrocities in the Congo. He tried to bribe them, he tried to intimidate them, but at the end, he's the one who lost. So that is the mightiness of the pen. So when I'm writing about the injustice, and you come and you nearly kill me, and I go on, I write about how you're trying to kill me, you again come back and you want to kill me, and I blow off my steam on social media, I calling you a cannibal, and you say that that is a bad language. For example, they picked flesh from my thighs using magal pliers. If you are not a cannibal, why would you pick someone's flesh from his thighs? To do what? So that is why I call them cannibals. So if I call them cannibals and you start arguing with me that you're being abusive, what do you want me to call them? If they get batons and they hit my ankles and they break them, and I call them whatever I call them, if they shred my back, if they mutilate me, and I call them cannibals and pigs, Where is the problem? What do you want me to call them? Exactly that. That is how they are. It is called description. If I describe their actions in my writing, it doesn't mean that, I am being abusive. It is called descriptive literature, and I am describing exactly what they are. People want to do bad things, but they don't want to be talked about. If I asked them, where did they put the flesh that they picked from my thighs? No answer. If they think that the law works in the country, in Uganda, what they should have done, they should have someone meet the police station to make a statement, and they take me to court. But they took me to SFC. They beat me up, almost killed me. I spent 14 days in SFC being tortured in total disregard of the law. The law of habeas corpus is inviolable. They disrespected 2 orders. They disrespected it. And they brought me to court when I was almost dying. The anti-torture laws in Uganda, they say that a person who is tortured should never be, even the criminal proceedings should never go on. The magistrate refused to stay the proceedings and instead remanded me to prison. How do you describe such people, Mr. Serwanjja? How do you describe such people who refuse to use their heads and they use their bottoms? How do you describe them if it were you? Put yourself in my shoes, Mr. Serwanjja. How do you describe such people who cannot use logic? They cannot use their head. Instead, they use their bottoms. How do you describe them? How do you describe people who shredded my back, who broke my ankles, who removed my nails? I reached here in Germany and the doctors saw me. They started crying. They asked me, they were short of words. So if it were you, Mr. Serwanjja, how would you describe such people? And upon describing them, they start telling you that you are abusing them. Really? It doesn't make sense, Mr. Serwanjja.
I feel your pain. Mr. Kakwenza.
There is always let me tell you something, Mr. Serwanjja. There's what we call social contract. I pay taxes in exchange for the state in agreement. Okay, it is an agreement between the citizens and the government. It's called a social contract. I pay taxes and in exchange for the government to take care of me, to respect my rights. It is their obligations. But if the state cannot do that, cannot honor the social contract agreement, what are we supposed to do as citizens? They are supposed to protect our rights, but they are the ones killing aimlessly, senselessly, torturing senselessly, and then they deny. So what are we supposed to do as citizens?
Mr. Kakwenza.
What are we supposed to do as citizens, Mr. Serwanjja?
I hear you.
Taxes in agreement that we give up some rights in exchange for government's protection, but the government has failed to protect us. So what are we supposed to do? You speak, they come for you. You speak, they break you. You try to gather and sensitize masses, they tear gas you, they kill you, they throw you in prison, all of you. Where is our voice? What are we supposed to do? The parliament cannot even help. The judiciary cannot protect our rights. So what are we supposed to do?
And right there, let's talk about those.
Moving in the armpits of the dictator, they cannot do anything. The country is getting plunged into the abyss of,
Mr. Kakwenza, let's talk about those arms which you thought.
It really pains me a lot.
I feel your pain, and I can imagine what your family went through, seeing what you were going through, and the entire community. Even I was saddened about what had happened to you. I remember when I did a Twitter space, really, and everyone was just talking, pushing back on government, which brings me to the systems that we thought would protect you. I mean, systems like the judiciary, for example. And you've said that the habeas corpus rules was really faulted. Does that mean that the judiciary sometimes does not perform to our expectations? Because I remember there was a habeas corpus application that was placed, present him dead or alive, and it was skipped. And
not one, it was actually, there were two. By the time I was produced in court, my lawyer was already in court again to put the third one. So such an order is inviolable. But again, the magistrate representing court goes ahead and fails to stay the proceedings after my tormentors urinating on the writ of habeas corpus. Which kind of judiciary is that, honestly, that cannot protect human rights? Mr. Serwanjja, you do not have to agree with me with what I say to protect my rights. You do not have to agree with what I do to protect my rights, because I know my rights are inviolable. But the reason why these people torture and imprison without, in total disregard of the law is because they know that they do not have. They know they cannot win a case. First, tell me a case that has been won, whereby this in accordance with Section 25 of the Computer Misuse Act, they just arrest, take you, torture you, take you to court. Then they go into the speculative prosecutions, ineffective trials. Nothing goes on, and then they discharge you for want of prosecution. It is all nonsense, absolute nonsense.
I hear you. Are you using your voice now to push back on torture? There are so many people like you who have gone through torture. I mean, we know them. The press in Uganda writes about them. Are you now, using the power of the pen to push back against torture in this country?
For me, I will do whatever it takes to make sure that we have a presentable government, so that we have a credible government. It could not be this 37-year-old interim government. It could be another government. But I hope that the government that will take over from NRM will be a very credible government that respects rule of law, that respects authority, that respects democracy.
Mr. Kakwenza, President Museveni has come out publicly to speak against torture. He has, called on different security agencies to tell them that this is not why they went to the bush, to speak up against torture. Do you think that perhaps you could have a rethink and hold people who did this to you accountable?
That is just a cosmetic speech meant for the international audience. Mr. Museveni himself, when I was arrested for the first time, I met him. Himself, I met him. From meeting him, I was taken and tortured. Mr. Museveni, when he was asked about my torture, my very, very recent torture, on live television, he blamed colonialism, a tradition of colonialists. What has he done to the people? I have mentioned 3 people I know who tortured me, who were in my torture. What has he done to them? His son-in-law, Odrick Ruabog, took a report to him. What did he do? He's a father, he's a brother, he's a respectable person in the eyes of many. After seeing my photos, my scarred body, my mutilated body and broken ankles, my thighs without flesh, what did he do? Did he say, I am instructing to arrest people who tortured Kakwenza. Did he say that? I will start believing him if he says that. But before that, I cannot take his word serious. I have said it, Mr. Serwanjja. I know 3 people, and okay, many more, but I have mentioned here people in the system. Mohozi, his assistant Dennis, Major Dennis Kakande, Bill Nyamhachi. Let him start with those ones, and then we shall know that, yeah, the president is against torture. But before that, he should just shut up.
Mr. Kakwenza, how does your future look like? What in terms of fighting for human rights in Uganda?
Mr. Serwanjja, I have told you that I have enrolled for a Master of Laws. I'm going to study my Masters, I'm going to study my PhD. I'm coming back to do LODC, and my life does not belong to exile. I am coming back home. When I feel comfortable, when I feel healed enough, I'll come back home and I will be a champion of human rights.
Mr. Kakwenza, what needs to change in this country?
Right now, what needs to change is the government. I told you, Mr. Serwanjja, this government is very useless. We need to get up. We need to get leaders who respect the law. We need to get leaders who understand that we are all equal before the law. You cannot get leaders who think that the law is only for the oppressed, and when it comes to them, they just walk away free. For example, the deputy speaker was caught on camera torturing someone who caught him stealing electricity. What did the law do to him? Chameleon was caught seriously caning someone. What did the law do to him? But a young girl, who was a young jilted girl, was caught on camera fighting with another girl, and she's going to serve 3 years in prison. Why is equality there, Mr. Serwanjja? We need strong and independent institutions. This judiciary must stand up and be on the side of the oppressed. They must enforce the human rights. If the police fails, at least if we have a strong judiciary and a strong parliament, at least we can work on that. But also they are also mindful of their careers. They cannot stand with the people. They know that their careers will be stagnated. They know that they will not be getting appointments, judicial appointments. Take an example, Dr. Douglas Singiza, a whole person who has a Master of Laws. He has a PhD in public law, subject me to judicial harassment. And after that, he got a judicial appointment. He is now a High Court judge. Which person can do that? A person who went to school and studied law and mastered in it and got a PhD in it to behave like just a street crook. And when you talk against such people, they say that you are bad-mannered, you are abusing them. It's simply describing them.
Mr. Kakwenza, what are your concluding remarks?
My concluding remark, Museveni must go. That is my concluding remark. And he must not go alone, he must go with his fellow crooks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Serwanjja. Apologies for being tough, but you know what I went through was not, if it were you, you would be more tougher. Not so.
Yeah, I would. But just before we go, I just wanted to find out, how are you surviving in exile? You know, sources of income, maintaining your life, your family. You know, how are you surviving? I mean, I can't imagine how you're doing it.
Mr. Serwanjja, I'm surviving very well. That's why I managed to, in a shortest time, evacuate my family from the country and bring them to come to Germany with me. though I'm not comfort, I cannot say that I'm comfortable, but this is life in exile. I always tell my children we are in exile, so we have to deal with it until the situation becomes fine or until we return home.
How are they coping?
The young ones are coping very well. They have started school. They are enjoying. Yeah. But for me, I will be fine when I board a plane to return back home. And I will return home, Mr. Serwanjja.
This is your home, Mr. Kakwenza.
Home is where you feel safe. I'm in Germany, I'm very safe. I'm going to study. I'm going to get, everything that I need, but I must return home and make things right in Uganda. Because, even when I'm here, I'm doing some work, I'm exposing the dictator, definitely. Wherever I go, I tell them, look, Museveni, when he went to exile, actually, by the way, let me ask you, when Museveni went to exile, who was chasing him? He was lucky he even had a passport with him. Me, I fled to exile without a passport and with a shredded body. Museveni fled to exile with a passport, with a very clear body. He had no scars, but he fled to exile and he started saying that Amin was bad, Obote was bad. So the conditions that took him to exile, if you compare them with the conditions that took me to exile and how I was looking when I fled to exile, whom should you believe? Do you believe Amin and Obote or you believe me? I did not have a passport. My body was all scarred. My nails were missing. So now, for him, he was very fine. He even had a passport. He fled to exile and started, spreading propaganda against the government in Uganda. They are very bad. They all okay. For me, whenever I am meeting these important people, I present evidence. I tell them, look, this is what the government of Uganda did, and you're happening with them. These are terrorists. So for him, when he fled the country, and he started, spreading, which evidence did he have?
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kakwenza Rukirabashaija, for speaking to us this day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Serwanjja. The conversation was all good until you brought in women breasts and some other stuff.
It's part of it, right? It's part of accountability.
But I look forward to more engagements, Mr. Serwanjja. And I must thank you so much for the job well done. We follow you a lot. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kakwenza Rukirabashaija. Thank you very much. Well, I have been speaking to celebrated and award-winning novelist Kakwenza Rukirabashaija live from Germany. This is The Hard Questions.